way of introduction, I'm Jim Sim. I know you all know me at least. I may be the only person that everybody knows on this call, but I'm current president of the Midwest Pipe Band Association and facilitating this call for the Chicago Scots. Kevin, your title is chairman, is it, of the RSPBA?
That's correct, yes.
Could you maybe talk about the hierarchy of the RSPBA? A lot of people really don't know how the RSPBA is organized.
Absolutely, Jim. Yes. Can I say that this is my second stint as chairman of the Royal Scottish Pipe Band Association? I was fortunate enough to be chairman back in 2000 to 2006, and my first ANAPABA conference was in Vancouver.
That's right.
Where Jeff Mann took me to some funny places. But we won't talk too much about that. Yeah, the RSPBA, as it's well known as, has been in existence for 92 years. We started off in 1930, and it was basically a group of pipe majors were coming back from the Cowell Highland gathering. They were coming back on the ferry, and they got very upset at the results because they thought everyone was corrupt. Now, we all know that all pipe majors think every adjudicator is corrupt unless they give them first place. But these guys decided to set up their own association, and from that spawned the Scottish Pipe Band Association. We didn't actually get the royal warrant, the royal, until 1980, which was our 50th anniversary. We currently have about 350 bands on our register. We don't cater for solo pipers or solo drummers, although we do run the World Solo Drumming Competition, which is a bit of an anomaly, but we are an association made up of bands. And, you know, that's it. We have a headquarters in Glasgow, in Scotland, which bad timing, but we just spent nearly £1 million refurbishing our headquarters to a fantastic standard with teaching rooms and, you know, performance areas and all the rest of it, that unfortunately we've never been able to use simply because of the situation that we're in. Our association is run by a board of directors, and that's the 16 people, and that includes the chairman and the vice chairman. And we're representatives from all over the country. So we have different branches of the association, Northern Ireland, England, we've 2 in England, 6 in Scotland. And, you know, the directors come from that, and they're put there to run the association. The board of directors, as we're known, are governed by the members and our annual general meeting. So what goes on, everything's got to go through our annual general meeting, and that's where the decisions are made, and the board of directors are there to fulfill the wishes of the members. On the board of directors, we also have standing committees, which is a finance committee. They look after, obviously, all things financial. We have a standing orders group, which look after the rules, regulations, and articles of association. We are a company limited by guarantee, and we're also a charity. So we have strict guidelines that we've got to follow with RSBA, which is the Scottish Charities Commission. If you upset them, it costs you a lot of money. For example, if we upset Oscar, straight away we would lose our rates allowance. It would cost us about £20,000 to £25,000 a year extra if we lost our charitable status. So, you know, the standing orders are there to make sure everything's right. They make sure all the rules within the association are correct, and then they look after the rule book. And then we also have a marketing and media department. They look after anything to do with market and media. Like so when Jim sent me an invitation to come along to this today, I would have got to then contact the marketing and say, I've been invited to do this. It's basically a chat about the association, where we are and all that. And I've almost got to wait on their permission to say yes, because unfortunately, we've been stung too many times before. You know, examples where you could go on and on and on, where you say something and they're reported slightly differently. So we try to be very careful. They look after our website. They look after any merchandising that we produce, any books that we produce. So that's our board of directors and the standing committees there. Also, we have a music board. Now, our music board, who report to the board of directors, they're not part of the board, they actually report to that. They're responsible for all matters musical, things like standards and grading, tunes. You know, we have dedicated tunes that bands have got to play. They're responsible for them. And they also look after competition format. They're responsible for all the format for competition. So it's a busy group, that. And again, that is comprised from people from all over the country. Each branch can send one piper and one drummer to the music board. And that meets, well, at the moment we're meeting every 4 or 5 weeks because we've got so much work on at the moment. We also have an adjudicators panel management board, the APMB. I don't know where they got all these acronyms from, but they're coming out of the wood. And obviously they look after everything adjudication wise. Now, they are all adjudicators. Up until my last time as chairman, say the late 90s, our adjudicators were not part of our association. We employed them to adjudicate, but they were not part of the association. So very early on in my tenure, we actually brought the adjudicators on board with the association. So they now form a very important part of our association. And obviously they look at anything to do with adjudication. And then they also have regular meetings with the music board. We call it the liaison group. And, you know, we can discuss things there and that. So that works quite well. And then last but not least is we have our pipe band college, which again, way back, you may remember it, that the association did have a pipe band college, and that fell by the wayside. It was changed and altered by other things, but that's been resurrected, and the pipe band college look after anything to do with education. We actually, the education convener, I'm saying convener, a chap called Pat Whelan. Now, Pat is actually employed by the association to be the man that looks after the education group. They look after all the PDQB stuff, pipe band qualification stuff, Scottish qualification, and Scottish Council for qualification format. So his role is to look after that, and that's run by one piping convener, who you probably know as Tom Brown. Jim, he's a convener of the college. Jim Campbell's piping convener. Tom's son, funny enough, Paul Brown, is the drumming convener, and John Nevins he looks after our summer school. So there, you know, that's a brief rundown of the association at the moment. How we're run, where we've been. As I say, we're 92 years, so we might have got one or two things right.
Very good. It's a lot larger than people realize. I know that.
You're absolutely correct, Jim. People have got no understanding. I mean, I remember talking to one of your chaps, Tom Withers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Or Withers. I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
Withers. Yep.
Withers. Okay. And at the time, I was in charge of the grading standards and grading group because I convened the music board, and he came on about looking to get band graded or no, sorry, long complicated story. It doesn't really matter. But then when I says to him, I says, well, look, I says, we'll get the results to you as quickly as possible. I says, but so far this year, and this was about the March, April time, we'd had 130 regrading issues. And he went, oh dear. I says, what do you mean? He says, well, I would deal with maybe 3 or 4 in a whole season.
Right.
You know, now as a result of COVID, I don't know if I'm going too far, we're expecting a massive influx of grading issues. And I think probably all the associations should be aware of this as well. You know, that 2 years since we've actively had competitions, so that the structure and the playing people within bands will change. And so we're expecting our gradings and standards group to get a right hammering. In fact, I've got to organise a meeting with them so we can try and plan how we're going to cope with all the changes and possible changes.
And Jeff Mann, you're the chairman, longtime original chairman of the Alliance of North American Pipe Band Associations,
right?
Which encompasses, is it 10 now associations in North America?
That's correct.
And you're also the current president of the Western U.S. Pipe Band Association. So you're wearing two hats.
Right.
Maybe you could talk about ANAPA, how it came about and how it's organized today and what its structure is.
Right. So way back when, probably 1997, one of the bands in Southern California went up to Maxville, Ontario, to compete at the North American Championships. And they had not read up on all of the rules and regulations governing, you know, the championships. And because of that, this band was disqualified from competition. And they had spent, you know, they had about 40 players and you know, about $1,000 per person getting up there. And so they were quite disappointed when they came back and they were unable to compete. And so I sat there thinking about that, and I thought, well, why don't we just get all the pipe band associations together and find out what everybody does and find out what the rules and regulations are, so that, you know, if one of our bands wanted to go up to Canada or over to Scotland, or, you know, they, you know, everybody would know, be on the same page, so to speak. And they looked at me like I was crazy. I'd only been with the Pipe Band Association for a year. You know, I was a lowly registrar, membership registrar, and they looked at me and they said, you know, that will never work, you know. And so that only kind of made me a little more persistent and stubborn. So I thought, well, if they don't want to do it, I'll call them up myself and see, you know. So I called up each of the associations, and you know, at first they were a little leery. Matter of fact, I had somebody calling Tim Gladden, who was the president at the time, and asking Tim, you know, who's this Jeff Mann guy, you know? And I said, oh, he's benign. Don't worry about him. He's an okay guy, you know? And so eventually and then I remember contacting Eastern, and Eastern was saying, well, I'm not sure we're really interested. And I said, well, I was just curious, Ontario. Oh, is Ontario going? Yeah, Ontario. Well, if Ontario's going to be there, we better be there too, you know? And so that's kind of how we got everybody started. And we met in Salt Lake. I believe it was 1999, I think, was our first meeting in Salt Lake City. And, you know, it was really interesting because they came in on a Friday. And so we had a meeting on Friday evening, and then all day Saturday, and then part of the day Sunday. And then they all flew out Sunday. And, you know, most of the work, you know, we worked hard, you know, during those 3 days. But I would say the stuff that we got accomplished wasn't in the meeting rooms, but it was at night in the bars, you know. That's when everybody was sitting down, well, let's get serious about this stuff, you know. And then they'd come back the next morning and they'd have this whole thing all planned out, you know, what they wanted to do. And you know, the thought and the feeling was, you know, this is a good thing, and you know, it's good to communicate. So let's form an alliance. So that's kind of what we did.
And now NAPABA meets every 2 years in Kansas City, and all the associations, including the RSPBA, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, South America, everybody is represented now.
Right. It'll be good to have Kevin over, you know, get him over. We've had John Hughes. He's been great, you know, but Kevin and I, we spent a cold winter in Winnipeg once.
I was there.
Yeah.
And a warm weekend in Florida too.
That's right.
Yes, with Sandy Keith.
A quick question about that. I'm fascinated by how you did this, and I'm reading a quotation that I've been attributed to you online that says Jeff was able to accomplish something that is quite remarkable in the pipe band community throughout North America. He brought together 10 associations. Their leadership facilitated an environment that allowed cooperation between all the associations. There is a great amount of respect for him and his efforts throughout North America. I was once at an event where I was asked to give a presentation around the subject that Scotland is a nation of 5 million people, but the international community of Scots is 50 million. Give us a plan to bring them all together. And I said, you know, the McDonald's and the Campbells haven't spoken for generations, so getting 50 million of the buggers to speak to one another. And the Scots are the only people in the world where you could lock one Scotsman in a cupboard and they'll still come out with a black eye. You know, how did you do it?
You know, it was really interesting because I think that one of my mantras that I've always had, and I think at the NAPABA meetings, people are kind of sick of me talking about it all the time. But the thing that I have always, you know, every morning I go through my little mantra, and my mantra is, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And, you know, for me, that's kind of been my working, you know, if people know that you are truly invested in them, you know, people want to help. People want to be valued. You know, especially during COVID, I think that's really been telling for us, because we've done a major rework of our association in WSPA, Western United States Pipe Band Association. And with the inability to, you know, have band competition and that type of thing, you know, people are kind of saying, well, you know, what can we do? What can we do? And so we've looked, you know, we've stepped back, and I'm going off topic a little bit here, but I hope you don't mind. Our association, we looked at it and we said, okay, what are our weak links, you know? And we also have a music board, but our music board was divided into 3 areas of grading, adjudication, and education. And our education component was weak. There wasn't much being done because all the focus was on adjudication and grading. And so we have right around 700 soloists, and only about, you know, 54 bands in WSPA. And so we decided to develop an education council. So we have what we call the EDC, or the Education Council. Kevin, we also have all these crazy acronyms that we use, right? And then it sparked some interest, and so I had one of the pipe majors that works with some of the youth bands say, well, you know, what about us? And so I thought about that and I said, okay, let's organize a youth education council. So kids 19 and younger participate in a youth education council where they actually run the meetings. We've taught them how to do the Roberts Rules of Order, and we've given them training and things like that. But, you know, they've brought in over Zoom, you know, we've had Stuart Little, we've had Bob Worrell and you know, Lincoln Hilton over in Australia, and it's just been amazing to see what these kids have done, you know. And now they are organizing their first online contest, take place in June. But the other need that we felt that was lacking was games organizers. You know, we've had quite a few new games organizers, and they just, you know, they come to us and they say, what do we do? How do we organize the games? And so once again, we decided to form the OSPGO committee, which is the Office for Strategic Planning for Games Organizers. And under that umbrella, we have our band registrar, our solo registrar, our sanctioning secretary, and our stewards. Everybody that deals with games falls into this committee. And then when a new games is sanctioned, they're assigned one of the members of the committee to help them, you know, with anything that they need related to their games. So that's been really great. Now I was really interested when you were talking kind of about the theme that you're looking for, because we have one of our, and Kevin, I think you might know her, you might have met her, and I know Jim has. Her name is Lisa Nelson. And Lisa went back, and she was over in Scotland and up in Wales for about a year. And she came back, and she's into storytelling. So she was, I guess, certified as a Shawnee. And so now WSPA has our Shawnee committee, which is a group of people that are, you know, not so much into the piping and drumming. They are a little bit, you know, but they're not, that's not their forte, but they are so incredibly interested in histories of, you know, pipe bands and, you know, the great pipers of Scotland and, you know, the histories of the pipe band associations. And so they have been going and collecting YouTube videos to post on YouTube and doing online interviews with some of these, you know, some of these greats. And yeah, so our Shawnee committee has been great. We have our youth education. We also have a media press corps, which comprises a couple of these ladies that just can't get enough of social media. You know, they got to be on Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. And that's great. You just kind of let them go. But, you know, you go to them because you value what they want to do. And they just, you know, they just, it's just amazing to see people and how excited they are, you know, when they're valued, right? Sorry for the long response on that.
That's great, Jeff. Thank you very much. One thing I know, a point of this call is to make a public announcement that the Chicago Highland Games are on for sure. I think we would do it in midst of an earthquake if we had to at this time, but it's going to be June 17th and 18th of 2022. And we're hoping for a lot of big new things, as well as carrying on the momentum I thought the games had the last few years going forward. The last 2 or 3 years the games ran, they were the largest pipe band contest in the United States. So they really gained a lot of momentum, and I think we'll continue that momentum going forward. But we wanted to announce and have everyone put it on their calendars that June 17th and 18th, 2022, destination Chicago. Cheap flight from anywhere in the United States or Canada. But going on that theme, I wanted to ask you, Kevin, we haven't had a real contest now in over, well, will be over 2 years by the time we get back at it. Do you see any changes that might occur with future contests starting in 2022?
I think it's inevitable there's going to be changes, Jim. I do think that the world has changed. People's approach to piping has changed, to drumming has changed. It's sad, but I think, and this is a personal view, it's not an association view, that we may have lost a lot of people to pipe bands. I think we may have lost a lot of bands. And I'm not sure that some of our smaller games will survive, will have survived it. Now, that's a personal view, but I certainly hope that does not happen. I mean, a little bit more figure-wise, in 2019, last time we had competitions, we ran 35 minor competitions, or games as you call them, and also 5 major championships. Now that relates to over 1,500 pipe band performances.
Wow.
You know, the largest, which is the world's, is 277 performances. You know, okay, it's now over 2 days, as you're probably aware of that, but even still on the Saturday was 244 performances in 1 day. So you know, whether we get back to those figures or not, I don't know. I don't know. I would like to hope so. I'd like to hope so, but I do think there will be changes. I think we'll have to go out there and fight to get the people back into pipe bands, get them back out in the park and get them playing on the grass. And I think that'd be a big, big challenge. You know, I hate to say it, but, you know, pipers and drummers and people have found other hobbies, you know, like gardening and decorating and DIY, you know. Kids now, rather than pick up a chanter, are picking up PS5s and Xboxes because they're missing the social aspect of pipe band practice, where they can go along to pipe band practice, meet their mates, right, have a bag of crisps and a can of juice, and then go and cause havoc on the way home. They've missed all that, you know. So we've got to get that back for the bands, you know, and hopefully that will come back. But I think it might take more than 1 year or 2 years. I think it's a long-term prospect.
What do you think, Jeff, over here?
You know, I agree with Kevin. I think that, you know, it's really kind of a sad state when you see, you know, these kids, especially, that have kind of put down the chanter and the drum pad and are, you know, doing other things. I think that if we, as, you know, different associations, you know, play our cards right as far as, you know, trying to find ways to entice, you know, when Rob Roy and Braveheart came out, you know, I mean, there was a surge of people wanting to learn how to play bagpipes and stuff, you know, and so there's no doubt that you know, the newer generation, the kids, and even the older folks, you know, they still want to do it. We held our first outdoor games this last weekend in Grand Junction, Colorado. Now we had Glenn Thompson and Campbell Naismith and Seamus Coyne. You know, I mean, these ruffians come and judge, you know, the contest, but you know, it was like everywhere I looked, there was smiles. People were smiling. No masks. I guess in that county, no masks were needed. Those that wanted to could, but everybody was happy. Everybody was just great to, you know. And then at one point, they only had 2 bands that came out. But what they did was somebody went around and collected this group and said, okay, we're going to be the tri-state playground pipe band, you know. And they just got together and they threw a medley together, you know, just off the spot, and they had a great time. They had a great time. The tenor drummer, they didn't have any tenor drums that they would let him borrow, and so somebody let the tenor play a snare, and Ed Best's comment was, your drum is a little bit rattly, you know, but it was good. It was good. And I think that now there's a couple of other games that have talked to us and said they're looking at opening up this year as well. So that it remains to be seen, but it was so refreshing to see, you know, what they were doing in Grand Junction this past weekend.
That's great. Jeff, I'll go to you first with this one. As a pipe band association that organizes contests for bands, and in our case, soloists, what would you like to see maybe from games organizers and people that put the actual event on that maybe we're not seeing, or maybe something they're doing that you'd rather not see?
You know, Jim, the one thing that I've really kind of appreciated, well, one of the things that I've really appreciated about the Midwest Pipe Band Association is, and we're working on that right now, is how you folks get together with your game sponsors, your games organizers, on an annual basis, and you're able to sit down, and I'm not all sure of what is discussed, but the communication is ongoing there, and you know, improvements are made. And I think that that's the key, because when a pipe band association first comes on the scene, people are a little leery. They want to know if you're policing them, or, you know, that kind of thing. And if, once again, if you're there to support and to help, but they're not going to know that unless you can sit down and communicate with them, right? But if you get everybody together and, you know, all these different game sponsors, then you've got some synergy going on. And that collective synergy can really spawn some great ideas, you know?
Yeah, we did that almost out of necessity. I don't know when it started, in the late 2000 aughts, maybe 07, 08, 09, something like that. And it was really a financial thing. It was in the downturn of our economy at the time, and a lot of games were struggling financially. And we found ways on both sides, their side and our side, of how we could put on a better event for less money. And they talked to each other as well as us. And it was really, as you said, a great communicative thing, to the point now where it's almost an informative meeting rather than a change meeting. It's come to that now. And I think the games find it very valuable, and we do as well.
Right.
Kevin, what do you guys put on? Obviously the largest pipe band contest in history every year. You break your own record, I think, as well as 4 other major contests throughout the UK. Is there something that maybe you guys would like to see that from the organizers that you're not seeing?
Yeah, decent weather. Yes, it's very difficult because we are challenged by our major sponsors. We'll talk about the Worlds. The Worlds is the biggest. The record at the moment is 245 bands, which is phenomenal in one day. We are given a budget. Sorry, we asked for a budget from the Glasgow City Council. They are responsible for all the infrastructure and everything, publicity that goes around it. And our fee is purely to run the pipe band competition. So I'm saying there's lots of things. There's not the Worlds is a very well run competition. It's got to be with that number of bands to get through that. We start at 9 o'clock in the morning, and if we're lucky, the announcements are made at 8:30, 8 o'clock at night. You know, and again, people don't appreciate that. We have a very, very good working relationship with Glasgow. We do attend meetings, and you know, lo and behold, my first task taking over the job as chairman of this association was to tell the world that the Worlds had been cancelled. You know, welcome to being chairman. But that's how that goes with the territory. So we have a great relationship. They will suggest things to us about moving arenas and maybe changing this. We will make suggestions to them, and 9 times out of 10, they will make those alterations to the park, to the fields, to the parking. Lots of things that people think the RSPBA are responsible for and complain to us about are actually to do with Glasgow and not the RSPBA. And the biggest one, or biggest two, toilets and parking. You know, we've all got the same issue. Everybody wants to complain about the toilets, but the toilets at the World are cleaned out every hour, restocked every hour. You know, I mean, it's phenomenal what they do. Oh, and of course, the other thing is the price of a pint of beer. That's another well-known complaint as well. But no, I think looking at our major championships, they are pretty well taken care of. We do work hand in hand with the organisers. Maybe down at the lower level, at the minor competitions, there are improvements that can be made. Again, with some of our minor contests, the pipe bands are an add-on. They are not the main feature of the day. They're an add-on to the day. Quite often they are tagged on to Highland Games. So you've got for example, I don't know, the Pitlochry Highland Games. Oh, and by the way, there's a pipe band contest that day. You know, so it's not the pipe band contest first, that sort of thing. So it's tagged on. So maybe to get a bit more kudos from the smaller games to say, you know, it's all about pipe bands. Because I think with a lot of the small games, take the pipe bands away from them and they won't have a games. You know, and again, we're not sure how many of them will survive anyway after this couple of years. But yeah, I think we've all got to talk to each other. I think that's important. And we've all got to learn from each other. And I think what we don't do very well, I certainly know as a pipe band association, we don't do very well, is we don't ask our members what they want. And I found that very important. I mean, you're probably well aware of the fact that the RSPBA have been looking at grade 4B and novice juvenile B as to how the competition is going to start for them. They will not start from a start line. We're having a trial where they will not start from a start line, but they'll actually walk into the circle, form the circle, and start from there. And we want to see if that makes the performance better for the bands and for the public, because we know that march between the start line and the circle can be one of the worst parts of the performance. We're trying to look at that. But we surveyed our bands, our grade 4 bands. And lo and behold, out of the 230 that we surveyed, we actually got responses from about 70, which was phenomenal. You know, so we really do need to start listening to our bands and start asking them questions. As we've also done with the grade 1 pipe majors and leading drummers, we've done the same with them as well. So anyway, I think I've talked enough.
We've done that the last couple of years since, well, up until 2020, sent surveys out to all the bands. And sometimes you're surprised at the response. As simple as a question is, why do you attend certain contests? Mm-hmm. And the answers to that really kind of surprised me. It's not about so much things you might think it's about, but it's about other things that are more important to the bands than you thought they were.
Yeah. My father dragged me along.
Right.
One of the responses that we got was, what was it? I better get this right now. Can you not keep the noise down because it's too noisy at the competition? You know. But that's people's thoughts and that's people's feelings. I think what they were meaning is more room between the arenas so they could actually concentrate and listen to the arena they wanted to listen to. But instead, you've got this cacophony of noise coming from everywhere, you know. So, so when you look into it, it's probably a bit more genuine than you think.
We kind of touched on this a little bit, Kevin. Jeff did, particularly about education in the associations. And I know you guys are now running the PDQB as well. I think what the public might find interesting is the Scottish school system now offers piping and drumming. And some of the bands, when I was at the Worlds in 2019, the novice juveniles and the juveniles from some of these schools are just incredible, the players they're producing through the school system. Mm-hmm. Is that something you could talk to us about, how that started and how it's progressing?
I think it sort of started, Jim, in the sense that traditional music in Scotland was seen to be lapsing, you know, and that there wasn't enough traditional music within the schools. So I'm not saying that the Scottish government made it mandatory to touch on traditional music in schools, but there was certainly a big influx of that. Now, I think, Jeff, you mentioned about young people watching pipe bands and that and want to be part of it and all this. You mentioned Rob Roy and you mentioned Braveheart, and there was an upsurge. We can actually trace an upsurge back in Scotland to Red Hot Chili Peppers. And when the Red Hot Chili Peppers came online, lots of young people watched it and said, oh, I want to play the bagpipes like them. Now, whether you like them or not, it's a material. And at one point, about 40% of our membership was young people under the age of 19. And that is incredible. Moving on to the schools, what actually happened in Scotland, you've got local authorities. Although it's one country, you've got all the towns and cities have all their own local authorities. Now, some local authorities employ piping and drumming tutors to go into the schools. My nephew, I think he pays, I don't know, £100 a term. And for that, he gets half an hour a week. You know, so a tutor actually goes into school. He's taken out his lesson and he's given half an hour of tutoring. And he pays for that. And, you know, then it's up to that. So that goes on in a lot of local authorities. I mean, Tom Brown, if you got a chance to speak to Tom Brown, Tom was the main piping tutor for Fife. Great success, and lots of good bands came from there. Where it's really taken off is in the private sector. Because in Scotland, as you know, we've got the private schools. And some of our private schools have done so well. And we can mention them, Heriot's, Watson's, who else have we got? Lathallen, Strathallen, Robert Gordon's, you know, Johnson do a lot of work as well. And George Watson's, and I'll probably get the figure wrong, last time I spoke to Ian Simpson, who's the principal piping tutor at George Watson, he's got a team of about 6 or 7 piping and drumming instructors. And weekly, they're turning out between 90 and 100 pipers and drummers that they're actually tutoring. They've got 2 to 3 bands actually playing. I think they've got, the last figure I had was 90 playing members as well as learners. And all that is done within the school. And that's where the good stuff's going on. And it's really great to see that. And that's what it should be taught. It should be taught as that. And what the kids can do is when they go through the tutoring, through the process of learning to play the bagpipes, they can then go on and start looking at the PDQB, which is Piping and Drumming Qualifications Board, who are, there were 5 principal piping groups within Scotland, which is the Army School of Piping and Drumming, the Pembroke Society, and RSBA, the College of Piping, and the Piping Centre. Again, we came together. And I'll tell you what, that was a hard job getting that lot together, you know, because they've all got their own way and they all want their own way. But we saw the sense in putting out joint stuff. So we formed the PDQB, which then got all the exams, all the education tidied up, put it forward to the Scottish Qualifications Association, and they accepted it. So now kids can actually do qualifications at school and get qualifications in piping and drumming through the school system, which is a phenomenal thing. They can also do it individually. They can also do it as centres. I mentioned Johnson there. Johnson are a band, but they put forward a lot of education, so a lot of their children go through. So really, there's that, and then we also have what's called the SCQF. I've written it down somewhere because I can never, these blooming acronyms again. Scottish Credit and Qualifications Framework, where a child can actually do a grade in piping, and then that can be transferred over as like a currency. So he can buy, and if he does another course, they can look and say, well, that qualification carries this currency, therefore you don't have to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Credential. It does, yeah. So that's another great thing that's happening at the moment, Jim, as far as education goes. And all I'll say is I'll finish this little bit off by saying that hopefully by the end of I'm looking for it here. I'm looking for a date. Sorry, doesn't matter. Winter session. By the end of August, we should have examined something like 278 young people and individuals. That's only us as the RSPBA. I can't give you figures for the Army School and for the college. The Pembroke Centre don't tend to do a lot. The main people are the Army and the College of Piping, sorry, the Piping Centre. But we're looking to process 278 young people and get them certificated.
Very good. It's made a world of difference, I know, over there. One of the things we're doing in the Midwest, we just started before the pandemic hit. We had 1 year of it. We have a solo piping and drumming contest. We have 5 regional contests all throughout the Midwest. And the winner, the top 3 of each of those regional contests gather for a finals contest. And the top 3, actually the last 2 years, it's been the top 4 pipers under the age of 18 get piping lessons paid for with anybody they want in the world. That's one thing Skype and Zoom has done. They can take lessons from anybody over here, people like Bob Worrell, Jack Lee, Ken Eller, or they can go to Scotland, Willie McCallum, Stuart Little, Callum Beaumont, and they take lessons. Here's a 13 or 14-year-old kid from Iowa can take 4 lessons with Willie McCallum, and it's all paid for. So that's the kind of thing we've just started here. And now we've added drumming to that, and the drumming event will be in September at our games in Waukesha outside of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the drummers then will have the same options available to them. So that's how we're kind of handling it that way, is taking advantage of tutors outside of our area as well. And I know that in the U.S., St. Thomas Episcopal School down in Texas, in Houston, Texas, has done a great job with school-age kids. And they have, I think, 3 bands now. And I would say at least 100 kids involved in that, as well as Highland dancing. And they're doing a great job there. They won the Grade 2 World Championship in 2019. And Jeff, you have a school near Los Angeles, Glendora High School. They've had a teaching program for a long time.
Right. So there's Helix High School down in San Diego, and then Glendora. The University of California, Riverside actually has a program where they are giving a bachelor's in music with emphasis in piping and drumming. So Ian Whitelaw and Ed Best have been working with the UCR school there. So yeah, that's
the future, and it's we do what we do, but we have to think of what goes on after we're all gone.
You're absolutely correct there, Jim. Without young people, we don't have a future. Right. The young people are our future, and we've got to give them the ability to learn and to progress. You know, it's our heritage we're looking at here. You know, and we've got to keep that going. It really is. And you know, a lot of young people get a lot of bad press, but I can assure you there are a lot of very, very good young people out there.
Here.
You know, I was in education, a different type of education, as Jeff knows, but you know, I look around and I'm a great believer in the fact that there are no bad children. You know, lots of bad parents, but not bad children. And let's invest in them. Let's give them what we can. I will say that again, our schools. There is a group called the Scottish Schools Pipe Band Trust, I think they're called. They're not the enemy, but I don't know a great deal about them. And they provided something like £200,000 towards piping and drumming in schools, including a loan system of up to 200 sets of bagpipe. So children, young people could go and borrow a set of bagpipe to learn on, and it was all funded by this group. And they are the people behind the Scottish Schools Pipe Band competition. I don't know if you know about that.
Yeah.
Again, it's something well worth looking at. It's not a standard pipe band competition, Gus. It starts off with lots of similar things, but then goes into what they call the freestyle. And some of these freestyle events are fantastic. It gives an opportunity for guitarists, for banjo players, for accordionists, for dancers, singers, all to play together as a band, and that's judged. And I would like to encourage more of our bands to do that. I mean, one of the things we've been looking at is doing a sort of showcase type competition where bands would. It's not about. As you know, we've stayed away from online competitions because we don't feel the playing fields are right. We don't think the safeguarding, at this moment, the safeguarding is maybe a little bit iffy in a lot of these things that we're not sure about. But what we do want to do is we want to develop young people and older people who can play and play online, but then not be given a first, second, or third, but be, you know, pointed to where they should be. So say, you know, they're given a description, that they're given an opportunity to get I've lost the word, it's gone, but they would be signposted to where they should be looking. And then also look on and do some form of showcases thing. So, you know, it's seen rather as developmental as opposed to competitive.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's the hour has quickly flown by here, and I think that's a great note to maybe end on, is the youth and the future, and going forward out of this pandemic. That's where we all need to be, and certainly I think we're looking forward to the future with smiles on our faces and hoping that it all comes off, and maybe later this year to start, and then 2022 full boat again.